"You're trespassing. I'm calling 911." That's the first thing Victoria screamed before I even got out of my car. She knelt down, pulled out a measuring tape, and barked, 3.2 inches off the curb. That's a violation. You're done. I hadn't been back to this lakeside cabin my grandparents in years. I came for peace. Instead, I got a self-declared HOA queen treating me like a criminal on my own land. At first, I laughed. Just a nosy neighbor, I thought. But no, this wasn't random. This was the start of something calculated. She didn't want compliance. She wanted control. And I was standing on the one piece of land she couldn't claim. What she did next proved she'd stop at nothing to take it. And what I found next would end her 25-year reign one buried secret at a time. I hadn't planned on returning. But after testifying against my ex-boss for embezzlement and getting fired for it, I needed a place that felt like mine. My grandparents' lakeside cabin was supposed to be that place. Quiet, untouched, safe. When I unlocked the front door, the smell of pine wood and old books hit me like a memory. I stood in the living room setting down a small box of belongings, just framed photos, a broken coffee mug, and 2 unopened letters I hadn't had the courage to read yet. I placed my grandparents' picture on the mantel. Their smiles in that photo, standing right where I was now, made the weight on my chest ease for the first time in months. "Peace," I whispered. 5 minutes later, Victoria was pounding on my door like it owed her money. She didn't come to welcome me. She came to claim what she already considered hers. But why my house? She didn't knock. She pounded, like she was here to serve a warrant. When I opened the door, Victoria was already halfway up my walkway, lavender blazer perfectly pressed, one hand gripping a leather notebook, the other a measuring tape, fully extended. "I'm Victoria Hale." "HOA president," she snapped. "You're in violation on multiple counts." Before I could answer, she marched past me like she owned the place. She measured the distance from my bumper to the curb. 3.2 inches. Maximum is 3. That's a $100 fine. She eyed my worn-out jeans. Dress code violation. Not Lake Community appropriate. Then she crouched and measured my grass. 3.3 inches. That's another fine. She shoved a 200-page rulebook into my chest like it was a court summons. "This is Lakeside," she said coldly, "and you will adapt or be removed." She walked off without waiting for a response. Removed. How exactly did she plan to do that? As she left, a man emerged from the sidewalk behind her. Mid-40s, sunglasses, phone held high, recording everything, like he was documenting a crime scene. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't have to. Victoria gestured at him. "That's Richard, my board liaison." He nodded silently and kept filming. Then Victoria pointed at a woman walking by, maybe my age, maybe younger. The woman looked at me briefly, gave a half-smile of sympathy, then looked away quickly and kept walking. "That's Linda Victoria," said without prompt. "She learned her lesson last year. $500 fine, wrong color flowers." She looked back at me, her expression sharpening. "You'd do well to learn faster than she did." I stood there clutching the massive rulebook, watching her leave like a general inspecting conquered land. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was watching me. From day one. But why does she already know so much about me? By the time I closed the door, my hands were still shaking. The rulebook felt heavier than it looked, 200 pages of microcontrol dressed up as community standards. On the front cover, a yellow sticky note in all caps read carefully, "I'm watching." VH. It wasn't a warning, it was a threat. I looked at my grandparents' photo on the mantel and forced a bitter laugh. I thought I'd escaped tyrants when I left my corrupt boss. Turns out I'd just traded corporate evil for suburban dictatorship. But something gnawed at me. Not the fines, not the threats. It was that flicker of pain in Victoria's face when she mentioned someone named Ben, a name she cut off mid-sentence like it was a wound she didn't want reopened. Who was Ben? And what did he have to do with this HOA empire she clung to so tightly? Was this really about rules or revenge? The next morning I woke up before sunrise. If Victoria wanted compliance, she'd get it at least for now. I pulled on my oldest jeans, dragged my grandfather's rusted push mower from the shed and started cutting the lawn. Not out of guilt, out of spite. Halfway through the first strip, I heard them again, heels clacking against the pavement. "Stop right there," Victoria barked. I looked up, sweat in my eyes. She pointed at a handful of dandelions I'd just pulled. "Destruction of protected native flora. That's a $200 fine." I blinked. "These are weeds." Her eyes narrowed. "These are designated botanical assets under Statute 17B. She handed me a violation notice. It was already filled out like she'd expected me to break a rule before I even got out of bed. Which raised the real question. How far in advance had she planned all of this? 2 hours later, I walked to the community mailbox and froze. My face was plastered on the HOA bulletin board, 8x11, color print, front and center. Violator of the month. Below the headline, grass height 3.3 inches. Vehicle misplacement 3.2 inches from curb. Ecological vandalism 2 counts. Someone had circled my photo in red ink. A woman walking her dog stared at the sign, then at me. She pulled her child closer and whispered something. The kid pointed. "Look, Mommy. That's the bad guy." I stood there, stunned humiliation burning through me. This wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about public shaming, isolation, control through fear, and judging by the perfect lighting of the photo, I knew exactly who took it. Richard. He'd been filming from the shadows. But why go this far? Unless they wanted me gone, I barely made it back to the driveway when someone appeared beside me. "Linda." She glanced around, lowered her voice. She did the same thing to me last year. Her eyes were tired, nurse's eyes. $500 fine. I planted marigolds. She wanted petunias. I work 12-hour shifts. I don't have time to memorize flower codes. She swallowed hard. But, fighting her, that takes more energy than I had. Before I could respond, another voice called out, "Marcus." "Right," an old man waved from across the street. "I'm Harold. Knew your grandparents. Come inside for some tea." I followed him in. His living room was a time capsule. Photos, trophies, handwritten letters. "She's not just enforcing rules," Harold said, pouring tea. "She's clearing people out, one by one." He leaned closer, voice low. "She's done it before." I frowned. "Done what?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Claimed homes that weren't hers." Harold stirred his tea with a kind of practiced tension. "She wasn't always like this," he said. Back in 2000, her husband Ben, he was the first HOA president. Slick talker. Sold the idea of the association like it was a gift. I nodded slowly. Then in 2010, Harold continued he ran off with the HOA secretary, cleaned out the HOA's entire bank account, left Victoria and their daughter behind. I didn't say anything. She declared herself president the next day. No vote, no meeting, just claimed it, and no one challenged her. "We felt sorry for her," Harold admitted. "That was our mistake." He looked straight at me. "Since then, anyone who resists her ends up selling cheap or leaving humiliated." I leaned back in my chair. "This doesn't feel like compliance enforcement," I said. "It feels like conquest." Harold's reply was quiet but heavy. "Then maybe it's time someone pushed back." I walked back home with Harold's words stuck in my head. Push back. I had just spent 3 months fighting corporate fraud. Did I really want to fight again? But then I saw my grandparents' photo through the front window, smiling, hopeful, free. My grandfather's voice echoed in memory. "Never let anyone run you off your own land. Marcus, stand your ground." I opened the rulebook again, but this time I wasn't reading it to obey. I was reading it to find cracks, statutes, loopholes, precedents, and then I remembered what Harold said about the original HOA formation. Something about signatures that didn't add up. Dead people signing legal documents. If true, that could unravel everything Victoria built. But first, I needed evidence. I picked up my phone and called the county records office. "Hi, this is Marcus Hale. I need to review the Lakeside HOA formation documents. All of them. The county records office smelled like dust and regret. I showed my ID and was led downstairs to the archives. To my surprise, someone was already there flipping through files. It was Linda. She held up a thick folder. Property records. I want to know exactly what I supposedly agreed to when I bought my house. I sat next to her. You too? She nodded. Last year's fine. That was my daughter's college savings. A middle-aged clerk approached us, worn face, kind eyes. Let me guess, he said, not waiting for an answer. Lakeside HOA. We both nodded. He sighed. You're the 12th and 13th this year. He leaned in. My wife got hit with a $1,000 fine for painting our shutter seafoam instead of ocean blue. His voice dropped. So, yeah, I pay attention now. He glanced at the hallway. Come with me. I'll show you where the real records are. The clerk, Stan, led us to a back room lined with filing cabinets older than I was. No legal advice, he said, but I can show you what's public. For the next 4 hours, Linda and I combed through property deeds covenant clauses and HOA bylaws. My tech brain kicked in. I built a spreadsheet tracking everything. Then I found it. A dusty folder. My grandparents' original deed from 1952. Typed in fading ink. This property shall remain free and independent of any future homeowners associations unless the owner provides explicit written consent. I reread it 3 times. Stan, I said, waving him over. Is this what I think it is? He read the clause, then looked at me, eyebrows rising. That's a non-incorporation covenant. His tone shifted. In plain English, your house is HOA-proof. I stared at the paper heart pounding. So all her fines, all her threats. Stan smiled grimly. Legally, they mean nothing. The exemption was real. The clause on my deed made my home untouchable, HOA-proof. Stan even showed me a similar case from 2012 the judge threw the HOA out. He handed me the certified copy. You're free. But, walking to my car, I didn't feel free. I felt watched. At home, Victoria stood across the street again, tape measure in hand, berating someone else. She froze when she saw me. I smiled. She didn't. Something shifted in her eyes, confusion, then fear. If she never had control over my cabin, why act like she did? Why keep threatening liens, calling police unless she wasn't confused? She was bluffing, not just with me, with everyone. And it had worked until now. That night I sat with the truth my house was never hers to control. But what about Linda, or Stan's wife, or the dozens who'd paid thousands? This wasn't just about me anymore. I texted Linda, your $500 fine. Might be illegal. Do you still have records? All of it. Why I called Harold. Those old signatures who refused to join the HOA in 2000. He paused. You're not just walking away. No, I said. If she lied to me, she lied to everyone. I looked back at the deed. She didn't build an HOA. She built a scheme. And it was time to take it apart. 2:35 p.m. Victoria was back, same tone, same clipboard, same fines. $500 for your grass. $500 for unapproved watering. I took a sip of coffee. I'm exempt, I said. Your rules don't apply to my property. She froze. Then lunged for her phone. You're threatening me. I'm calling 911. Go ahead. Minutes later, cops arrived. She poured out her usual drama fines, threats, HOA violations. I handed over my deed. One officer read it, then looked at her. Ma'am, this property isn't under your jurisdiction. One more false report and we'll cite you. She didn't speak. She just stared at me. 2:42 p.m. As her voice cracked and her authority crumbled, I made the first call that would burn her entire empire to the ground. In 6 minutes, I sparked the uprising. I called Stan, any legal record of Victoria being elected. His voice dropped no. But I've got records. Next the lawyer, check if she ever had legal standing. His reply, send everything. Now. I messaged Linda, bring every receipt tomorrow. We're going public. I called Harold. I need a list of names those who never consented to the HOA. He gave me 5. I posted in the private group, "Was Victoria ever voted in? If you have proof or doubts, come tomorrow. 7 p.m. Within minutes, replies flooded in. No vote. No ballots. Just her voice barking orders. Victoria thought she ran Lakeside, but the clock had started, and this time, it was counting down on her. Victoria was still standing on my lawn when I ended the last call. She looked stunned, like she'd just watched a trap snap shut. I didn't say another word. I just turned, walked inside and closed the door. Then I waited. The community chat exploded within the hour. Dozens of neighbors replying to my post, "I never saw an election. She told us Bob appointed her. We just assumed it was legal." Richard Preston, her loyal cameraman, stayed silent. Until he messaged me privately, I have board meeting recordings, all of them. She never once called a vote. I think I've been helping a fraud. By dinner, my inbox was full residents sending spreadsheets, photos, documents. One message simply read, "We've waited 15 years for this. Tell us what to do." The dam wasn't cracking. It was collapsing. Richard showed up at my door the next morning, no camera, no blazer, just panic. I didn't know he said. I swear, I thought she was legit. He handed me a USB drive. 10 years of board meetings, recordings. She kept everything. I plugged it in. Every meeting started the same. "As president, I've decided. Effective immediately, I'm implementing. Never once. The board has voted. Never. We've reached consensus." Richard rubbed his face. "She ran it like a monarchy. I just filmed it. She fined people without cause, changed rules on a whim, shut down anyone who questioned her." I looked at the growing folder of evidence. "Do you realize what this is?" I asked. Richard nodded slowly. "Proof she didn't just abuse power," he said. "She created a regime." I opened my laptop. Time to write the indictment. That night, I didn't sleep. I built the presentation slide by slide, missing election records. Invalid fines. Audio of Victoria silencing dissent. Spreadsheets showing over $400,000 collected under threat. Linda sent hers $3,000 in 5 years. Wrong flowers, visible, bicycle, grass too green. Janet Palmer's message hit hardest. "I once asked at a meeting why we never had elections. She fined me $300 for disrupting community harmony." Dozens of similar stories poured in, every voice. A brick in her throne of fear. But as I pieced it all together, Harold's words echoed again. She never had enough signatures in 2000. Some names, they were already dead. I stopped typing. If that was true, then the HOA itself never legally existed. The next morning, we met at Harold's kitchen table. Linda, Richard, a few others, eyes tired but burning. "How did this all start?" someone asked. Harold pulled out an old notebook. In 2000, Bob Victoria's husband needed 75% signatures to form the HOA. He read the list aloud: Tom Henderson, Bill Martinez, Margaret Thompson, Robert Johnson, Frank Williams. Then he stopped. "I buried half these people. Before 2000. The room went still. Richard whispered, "He forged them." Harold nodded. "Dead people can't sign anything. And yet, here they are. I didn't speak. I just looked at the page again, those names, those dates. The entire HOA was built on lies. Victoria didn't inherit a community. She inherited a corpse in a suit." An hour later, we stood in the records office. Stan brought the original sealed official untouchable. We didn't need to check every line. "Just one did the job. Margaret Thompson," Linda said. "Signed January 2000. Harold's face dropped. "She died in 98. I spoke at her funeral. That was enough." Stan pulled up the death certificates: Tom Henderson, Bill Martinez, Robert Johnson, all dead before the signatures were dated. No need for more. This wasn't a mistake, Richard said. It was a setup. Harold spoke last. Voice cold final. They created an HOA with fake names and dead hands, and Victoria ruled it like a queen over a kingdom that never existed. We counted and recounted. Only 68% of homeowners had signed the original HOA formation. The law required 75%. The remaining signatures belonged to the dead. Stan leaned back, stunned. This wasn't just fraud, it's systemic, it's organized. Davis the lawyer joined via video call. His tone was cold surgical. Every fine, every rule, every board decision made under that false HOA is void. Potential civil damages hundreds of thousands, possibly more. Richard buried his face in his hands. We enforced this for years. You were victims, Davis said. Not co-conspirators, but now you have a choice. Harold stood, voice shaking. For 25 years we lived under lies. People sold their homes, took loans, were publicly shamed. He looked at me. So, what do we do now? I closed the file. We tell the truth. Tomorrow night, at the community center. By the next afternoon, the Lakeside Community Center was overbooked. Emails had flown, flyers posted, phones ringing non-stop. Every household was sending someone. Word had spread Victoria's empire is built on lies. There were no legal elections. She used dead people's names. Even Victoria's old allies were ghosting her. Linda worked late printing handouts, violation logs, legal summaries, forged signatures. Richard uploaded all the board meeting recordings to a shared drive titled Authoritarian Archive. Harold practiced his speech. Stan organized original documents in chronological order, sealed in a box labeled Evidence. I sat in my kitchen finalizing the presentation. 15 years of silence. One night to break it. Outside, kids played in the yards again, no measuring tape in sight. I glanced at the clock. Tomorrow, 7:00 p.m. Sharp. Victoria wouldn't just be questioned. She'd be exposed. 7:00 p.m. The Lakeside Community Center was packed wall to wall. Over 150 households represented. Handouts shuffled. Voices hushed. At the front row sat Victoria Lavender Blazer, leather folder in her lap, hands clenched white. She was alone. Even Richard sat across the room, flanked by other former board members. Her eyes scanned the crowd like she still ruled it. I stepped up to the podium, laptop in hand, heart hammering. Microphone on, the murmurs died instantly. Thank you all for coming, I began. Tonight, I'll show you 4 truths. Victoria stood abruptly, voice sharp. You don't have the authority to call this meeting. I am the president of this HOA. Someone shouted, Sit down, Victoria. Another, Let him speak. I looked at her calmly. Truth number 1, I said, clicking to the first slide. My house was never part of your HOA. Gasps rippled across the room. I clicked to the next slide. Truth number 2, Victoria Mitchell was never legally elected HOA president. A scan of HOA bylaws appeared. Any vacancy must be filled by community election within 30 days. I paused. Then, there are no election records, no ballots, no minutes, nothing. Richard stood up. I confirm it. I've been on the board for 10 years. No vote was ever held. Victoria just announced herself. The room erupted. Shouts, murmurs, a woman crying softly in the back. Victoria tried to shout over them. I did what I had to. I preserved order, but no one was listening anymore. I clicked again. Truth number 3. If she was never elected. I pointed to the screen. Then every fine, every punishment, every order she gave was illegal, and that was just the beginning. I clicked the next slide. Truth number 3. A single number appeared in bold red, $402,750. That's how much this HOA collected in fines under Victoria's rule, all without legal authority. Gasps turned into shouts. Linda stood holding her spreadsheet high. $3,000 from my family alone. Another neighbor, $8,000 just so my mom could sell her house. Then Davis, the lawyer, joined via video call. Every dollar taken under false leadership could be considered fraud. Civil lawsuits are likely. Criminal charges possible. Victoria's face drained of color. I was just continuing Bob's legacy, she mumbled. He told me to take over. I didn't flinch. That brings us to the biggest lie of all. The screen went black. Truth number 4. The room fell dead silent. I clicked. 5 names, 5 signatures, 5 people, already dead. The slide showed side-by-side comparisons. Signature, Margaret Thompson, dated January 2000. Death certificate, June 1998. I read aloud, each name hitting like a drumbeat. Tom Henderson, died 1998. Bill Martinez, died 1997. Robert Johnson, died 1999. Frank Williams, died 1999. The crowd froze. Harold stood, voice trembling. Tom was my best friend. I buried him. That's not his signature. Murmurs turned to outrage. 25 years. I said we followed rules, paid fines, obeyed threats from an HOA that never legally existed. Victoria backed against her chair like the air had left the room. No, Bob said he'd fix it. He promised me, a neighbor yelled. He lied, and so did you. Linda's voice cut through the storm. You used dead people to steal power. Victoria didn't respond. She just sat down, finally, silent. I stepped forward. My voice calm, final. We've lived under fear long enough. I call for a vote. Dissolve the HOA. Effective immediately. Hands shot up, one after another, then dozens, then all. 142 in favor, 3 abstain. No one opposed. Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't. This is my community. I turned to her, voice steady. No. It never was. You ruled through fear, lies, and signatures from the grave. This community belongs to the living, to all of us. Richard stood beside me, former loyalist, now witness. I moved to remove Victoria Mitchell from any authority, effective now. The crowd roared. She opened her mouth to argue. Nothing came out. Her folder slid from her lap. Papers scattered. That's how her reign ended, not with a bang, but with silence. And, for the first time in 25 years, Lakeside was free. 3 days later, Victoria was gone. Her house abandoned. Mailbox overflowing. For sale sign crooked in the yard. Whispers said she moved out of state somewhere, no one knew her name. But justice didn't end there. A class action lawsuit began forming. Davis filed preliminary claims for fraud, restitution, and abuse of authority. County investigators opened a probe into forged documents from 2000. Richard handed over 10 years of meeting recordings. Linda compiled over 300 separate fines into one airtight spreadsheet. The HOA's old bank account frozen, pending audit. Neighbors, once isolated, now gathered daily, fixing fences, repainting homes, laughing without fear of citations. And me, I stood by the lake, the one she tried to steal. My grandfather's words echoing, "Never let anyone run you off your land." He was right. We didn't run. We stood, and we took it all back. This story may sound dramatic because it is, but it's also real. Every fine, every forged signature, every act of silent suffering. And it reminds us, never accept authority without asking questions. Knowledge is power, especially when it's about your legal rights. Victoria's downfall wasn't just about me. It was about a community waking up. One person can make a difference when they stand for truth. Abuse of power always ends the same way, with collapse. But more than that, this was proof that when neighbors stand together, even the most controlling systems fall. So, if you're in a fight like this, don't walk away. Look closer. Ask harder questions. And never let fear silence you. If this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and share it. Not for me, but for every silent voice still living under someone else's rules.